Well, good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would be good to have you join us. A big case before the United States Supreme Court today, oral arguments over whether or not the federal government is allowed to invent new laws within these agencies without Congress passing them at all. You know, the feds place monitors on the boats of fishermen and then force them to pay $700 a day to babysit a federal official on their boat to prevent them from overfishing. Isn't that one of the craziest things you've ever heard? You're saying, no, Vince, I've heard a lot of crazy things. Well, this is one of them. Carrie Severino joins us now, the president of the Judicial Crisis Network and the co-author of Justice on Trial, the Kavanaugh Confirmation and the Future of the Supreme Court. Carrie, great to have you with us today.
Good to be here, Vince. How are you?
I'm doing very well. My understanding is the Supreme Court has been arguing this case today, or at least hearing the arguments about it. Give us a sense of what we're talking about.
They spent almost 4 hours hearing arguments in it today. And Vince, it's even crazier sometimes than you described. Not only these people are being forced to carry the people on their boats, paying Big Brother's salary, but it's in service of a law that doesn't say anything at all about it. And the courts below argued, well, as long as the law doesn't say anything, that leaves it ambiguous as to whether they're allowed to do it, right? As long as the law doesn't say you cannot force them to pay for these people, well, then maybe it leaves open the possibility it can. And they go even beyond that and say if there's a silence in the law, that means the agency gets to decide what they do. So of course, the agency would rather save its budget, their law and budget. They'd say, sure, why don't you pay for Big Brother to ride along on your boat and look over your shoulder? So this is really an outrage, and I think it violates the Constitution. It violates federal law about the Administrative Procedure Act. And the great news is, I think the court today recognized that. They said, Justice Gorsuch said, it boils down to who decides. Do the judges actually decide to interpret the law, or is it these unelected agency bureaucrats who have a vested interest in it? And I think we're going to see that the court agrees it's judges ultimately under our Constitution that decide the law.
Well, look, it makes me think about the 10th Amendment. I know the 10th Amendment deals specifically with the constitutional powers here, but when the founders put the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights, it was to make sure that anything else that's not covered by the Constitution, well, that's for the states and the people to decide. And so it strikes me that that's the spirit of the way our system is supposed to work. If an agency isn't explicitly given power by the Congress, they don't have that power.
That sounds pretty sensible, right? Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's the same kind of concept. And I think it was really disturbing, actually, to hear some of the way that the liberal justices were talking about that. They made it seem like, well, we have these experts on high that they just know everything, and why would you not want them to decide every aspect of your life? And of course, these experts know better than judges and probably know better than you or me. And that's a very pernicious way to look at the federal government. They even went so far as to suggest that because they're appointed by the president, even if the president doesn't really have full authority to fire them, that somehow they're accountable to the people. And I don't know about you, but I don't really think the fishery board is particularly accountable to me or to the voter at all. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes out, but I think these fishermen are going to have a much better time.
And how far-reaching could the consequences of this decision be? So if the Supreme Court comes out and goes, no, you can't put these minders on these boats and then force the fishermen to pay for them, what other things might that decision affect?
Yeah, that's really why there's so much attention on this case, because it's not just about the fishermen. It's about a way of interpreting the laws that the courts have used now since 1984, and it's caused a lot of problems. Paul Clement, one of the people arguing it, pointed out this is the reason that people like the Little Sisters of the Poor have been dragged back into court every time the administration changes, because remember, Obama tried to make these nuns pay for contraceptives under Obamacare, and they won in the court, and then Trump tried to change that, and he got sued for that, and he won in the court too. Every time the administration switches, the regulations switch. And so that means whether it's health and human services regulations, whether this is the environmental regulations, whether this is fisheries, whether it's agriculture.
Yes.
Every aspect of the deep state and the government can just switch on a dime whatever president gets elected next. This would really put a stop to that and mean that they're bound by law rather than just by their policy wins.
So what's at stake is this thing that we refer to as the Chevron doctrine. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and it's pretty far in the weeds, but again, it has a huge impact on the way that the deep state operates. Because if the Chevron stands, they have a blank check, especially as they're using in this case. Anytime there's nothing written, they get to make it up. The
way the Washington Examiner reports it today, they say the Chevron doctrine holds that if a federal rule is challenged in court, the court should defer to the agency. And its reasonable interpretation of the congressional statute, it says, grants them permission to create the rule. This is almost like the rule in my house. If dad says it, it doesn't matter what the rationale is, it goes. It's a parent-child relationship. It's not a government-citizen relationship, is it?
Yeah, as a fellow parent, I'm totally behind that in the family. Yes, I make the rules. I get to tell you what the rules are. If I forgot to mention something, I get to add it later. Yeah. But of course, we are sovereign citizens here. We get to decide. We vote for our legislators. We are the ones in a democracy that should be, through our elected representatives, passing the laws. They don't just get to hand it down on us and then make it up as they go.
This is also how you end up with a deep state or a bureaucratic state that is not responsive to the American people. And it's also how lawmakers get to avoid responsibility for considering important questions. They say, oh, well, we'll just let the agencies handle that. And what they've done is essentially create a fourth branch of government, Carrie.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I think that the argument spelled out really well exactly why this doesn't work. Because Justice Kagan kept saying, well, if Congress doesn't want the agencies to just have all this deference, they could change it. But the lawyer said, look, here's the problem. In Congress, half of the people in Congress have a friend in the White House at any one time, right? So do the Democrats in Congress want to get rid of this? No, because they know they're not going to get anything that they want done passed through Congress. It's too hard. They might have to compromise. They might get primaried if they do compromise. They're going to go to the White House and say, hey, buddy, give me this policy objective I want, and if you're going to get it passed. It shields them from the accountability, and it means they don't have to go out and do their job. They can just, ask for gimmies. And so no matter who's in the White House, nobody wants to undo it. It's a really bad situation that way. It creates all the wrong incentives.
So is there an unintended consequences here from a conservative policy perspective? So I just want to game this out for a second. If the court comes out and says that, no, the Congress needs to be much more explicit and agencies just can't make it up in their interpretation of the law, will that rein Trump's ability in to be able to affect positive change for the country by way of the agencies? Because he's going to meet a lot of resistance in Congress, clearly. I'm thinking of, for instance, when he wanted to reclassify various government officials under something called Schedule F to make it easier to fire them. Will there be restraints on Trump, should he become president again, that the Supreme Court may kind of accidentally impose here?
Well, look, first of all, I think the court's trying to think. They're not thinking, how is this going to affect
one
president or the other? That's not their job, right? They're looking at the long, big picture here. But, in theory, you're right. This is something that ties the hand of any president. But look at what happens in practice. And we saw this. The more any president, whether it's Trump or Biden or whoever, is incentivized to do put all their eggs in the basket of pushing things through executive orders, pushing things through administrative things. As soon as the other president comes in, it switches. So all of the great executive orders, all the great administrative regulations and stuff that Trump did, they're already gone. So if it is depriving him of something, what it is depriving him of something that is not going to be supported in courts. And unfortunately, if you've got judges, this is one of the problems with the Chevron doctrine. You've got judges who want to come to a result. Sometimes they're not going to necessarily follow it. They'll apply it to defer to the agency actions they like. And then when it's the agency actions they don't like, if they don't like what Trump did here and reclassifying those, for example, they'll just suddenly find that it's not as ambiguous and they actually can come to a judicial conclusion without having to defer. So it actually creates a very bad incentive for judges too, because it's yet one more tool in their toolbox if they want to find a reason to find in your favor if you are like the Biden administration.
No, I got it. I respect the principle of all of it, and I've been arguing for everybody to abide by principles throughout my career in expressing views on politics. But I am wondering to what effect this may stymie Trump's ability to move quickly, should he become president again, to, turn back the left here. It could create some interesting complications, again, in defense of a higher principle.
Yeah, but I think you have to wonder, is this really going to be applied even-handedly to his actions anyway? And so, if it's not going to be applied even-handedly, let's take it off the table for everyone.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense for me. The Supreme Court, Carrie, by the way, does have a bunch of really important arguments to be had in the weeks ahead, including on the election and the decision by Maine to banish, Colorado to, I'm trying to remember now, is it Colorado that they're hearing? Is that the case?
I think that's right,
or
but
Maine.
It's also moving so fast.
Yeah, they're removing Trump's name from the ballot.
For both of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be. It's funny. At the beginning of this year, we thought this is going to be kind of a ho-hum term by comparison, and it's really shaping up to be very, very exciting because we've got that. We've got Idaho's abortion law that the court is looking at. So there's a lot of really significant stuff, and I think the court is hating the idea that it's going to be thrust into this election battle. So I'm hoping they're able to set aside all of the politics of it and just say we need to be able to come to the correct legal conclusion on that, which I think is open and shut in terms of the arguments that a court could somehow single-handedly decide that Trump is now an insurrectionist and can't appear on the ballot. I don't think the court's going to give that the time of day, but
I hope not.
I still think they're annoyed they have to even hear the case.
By the way, the case is Colorado. That's the one, but it's happening in a bunch of states. The one that the Supreme Court agreed to hear was Colorado. And so how important is it that a decision like that be 9-0?
Well, it's obviously helpful to have it 9-0 just because it makes it clear this isn't a political conclusion. That said, unfortunately, I can't guarantee you get some justices that aren't necessarily willing to set their politics aside. And I think in this one, the legal question is very open and shut. I think it is so clear you might actually even get some of the, very liberal, very anti-Trump judges get on board and say, you know what, as much as I dislike him personally, as much as Justice Ginsburg once said, want to move to New Zealand if he gets elected, you still can't do that. I think there actually is hope because that decision was so out there.
Yeah, this will be a real test of who's principled and who's just a political hack. I guess we'll find out the answer very, very soon. Carrie Severino, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you from the Judicial Crisis Network. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
That's Carrie Severino. Isn't it amazing? So big case today. Boy, you hope that one goes the right way to reel back the out-of-control federal government in even a small way. But this seems like a big one. This is what the left is very much freaking out about this, going after their power centers, these agencies. Like I said, it will be interesting. It'll be interesting to look back. If the court does rule against these agencies being able to make things up willy-nilly, what impact might that have on a Trump presidency? I guess we'll be able to replay this tape when a Trump presidency emerges and the left is all of a sudden arguing that he can't do that. He can't do that. Elections do have consequences. The left is totally out of control right now, as always. But Biden has a campaign spokesman by the name of Michael Tyler, was just on CNN in the last 24 hours, and they're so goofy. They say Trump is some sort of existential threat to the country. What a unique authoritarian threat. He's going to be a dictator. But then if you ask them to be like, hey, describe literally any other Republican, they say the same exact things. In other words, their argument's ridiculous, including Nikki Haley. They think Nikki Haley is practically on their team. She's an authoritarian threat to the country. She's just like Trump. They don't even know how to talk about these things. Here's Michael Tyler. Have you heard of this guy? Here he is.
Every time MAGA extremism has been on the ballot box in 2020, in 2022, just last year, it has failed because the American people continue to reject the extremism they've seen from Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans across the country.
If that's true, is Donald Trump the candidate you most would want to face in a general election?
Well, listen, we're certainly prepared to take on whoever emerges from the MAGA Republican primary because, to be frank, there's very little distance between any of these candidates. They're all talking about.
I've heard that from other Biden officials, too. And
in other words, the whole argument is so stupid, and they know. They don't even know how to describe it. All they know is they want power, so they want to demonize their opponents, whoever that might be. Remember, they said Mitt Romney was going to put black people in chains. That was Joe Biden who said that. He said, Mitt Romney. Come on. Don't be ridiculous.
But
they're all talking
I've heard that from other Biden officials too, and I'm just curious about that. Does that undermine your argument saying there's little difference? Because on the one hand, you talk about how Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and has said that he wants to be a dictator and paint him as this unique outlier. But on the other hand, you say there's not much difference between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. So does that undermine the first argument?
Listen to the way he asked this question. He's so sweet to him. Doesn't it, I hate to say it, but doesn't it kind of undermine your first argument?
Much difference between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. So does that undermine the first argument?
Well, no, because everybody's doing their best to emulate the extremism that we see in Donald Trump, right? They are all running on advancing abortion bans. They're all running on ripping away health care from Americans who need it. They're all embracing the big lie, this MAGA extremism. They're all litigating the causes of the Civil War if black folks somehow benefited from slavery. So again, there's not a whole lot of difference between these candidates.
Yeah, meanwhile, first of all of that was a lie. Secondly, the left advancing bigotry in every institution we have in the country, telling black people that their race is going to determine a failure for their future. And, just like purging their political opponent from ballots, arresting him over and over and over again, and having utter contempt for the American voter. I don't know why we call them the Democrat Party. They don't believe in that system. Good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. By now, you know our border's wide open. Illegal immigrants are pouring across it. They're straight up thanking Joe Biden. They're like, hey, thanks, Joe. Without your help, I wouldn't be here. In fact, that's literally what an illegal immigrant just told the Daily Caller News Foundation on the border. Here's what it sounded like.
And what is your message to the President of the United States?
Honestly, thank you for this opportunity because we have really bad, without your help, we wouldn't be here. So that means a lot. That means a lot for me, and that means a lot for all of us. I have many friends across the border, and they're grateful. They have now a good financial situation. They help their family from Venezuela as well. They're trying to bring them, and I think that's awesome. So
are you scared of if Trump comes back?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah.
Are you scared he would deport you?
Yep. Scared if Trump comes back, says a citizen of some other country. I'm scared that I might be removed from this country I don't belong to. What? And it's amazing, isn't it? And that's not the first time we've heard that a bunch. We've heard lots of people saying, thank you, Joe Biden. And thanks for opening the border up for me so I could come in. Yesterday, there was a Biden campaign spokesman by the name of Quentin Fulks. He was over on the Fox News channel. Brett Baer, it turns out, is one of the only people in television news who's even aware of the contours of the border crisis. And he asked this Biden campaign spokesman to account for it.
Hold on, wait a second. You're not saying that the situation in immigration and the border is better under the Biden administration than it is under the Trump administration?
They'll lie about everything. It's quite a night. Excuse me. It's a nice night we're having. It's the middle of the day. It's like they'll just lie about literally anything. You're saying it was better now than it was under Trump?
And the border is better under the Biden administration than it is under the Trump administration. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying to you is that President Biden took office, sent a comprehensive immigration reform package to Congress.
Amnesty.
They have refused to pass it or do anything on it. They are grandstanding and playing political games.
He switched Remain in Mexico. Remain in Mexico policy, he flipped. Catch and release, he flipped. He changed the border situation.
Donald Trump rounded up immigrants, separated families, and put them in cages. That's not how we treat human beings.
There are more kids in custody under the Biden administration than there were under the Trump administration. Do you know that?
Biden.
So, listen, you have to concede that immigration is a vulnerability for the Biden campaign.
At the very least.
Can't you concede that?
What we concede is that President Biden is working on this issue and that Republicans in the House are playing political games and doing Donald Trump's bidding so that no real results get done.
They're so mindless and stupid. What? And then they go on television and they're like taken half seriously. Yeah, the border was is much better now than it was under Trump. What? What do you even? That's it. You're in timeout. You can't appear for 4 weeks and then come back and see. Let's try again. All right, so that guy tried to lie to Brett. Brett pointed out, there's more kids in custody right now than at any point during the Trump administration. And I just want to remind people why this is. If you take anyone into custody, if a family of people or somebody claiming to be a family illegally crosses the border and they're taken into custody, because of the government's stupid rules and something called the Flores Settlement Agreement, the kids cannot be held in custody for very long. They've got to be separated out. So if you're going to keep anyone in custody, the kids can't stay with them. That's the way it works. And so as a result, they have to be cared for while the adults are in custody. That is the explanation for all of that nonsense from the media. And so one of the changes that Republicans were pursuing in that legislation, H.R. 2, was to say, well, wait a second, we can keep kids with their parents. If they're all illegally immigrating together, let's make it so it's ironclad in the law that they can all stay together. Nobody gets separated. So Republicans are pursuing that. Guess who's stopping that? It's Quentin Fox's party. It's the Biden people. They don't want these families to stay together. They voted down a piece of legislation designed to keep families together. That's true. Now, I don't know if you've been making phone calls to Speaker Mike Johnson, but if you have, please keep it up. And if you haven't done it yet, please do it now. Because he's in the midst of a negotiation with the White House about the contours of what it's going to look like to, quote, secure our border. Now, as you know, Democrats would like to accelerate more foreign nationals across that border. And Speaker Mike Johnson is one of the only Republicans in the entire country who's in a position to put the White House here in a headlock and say, nope, you will secure the border if you want anything else out of us. Ukraine funding, anything. You will secure the border. Today, Mike Johnson and the rest of the congressional leadership all went to meet with Joe Biden at the White House. They had a meeting at the White House today. Ahead of that meeting, Mike Johnson had this to say. And it sounds like he's getting tougher on this. Let's take a listen.
We're not playing politics at this. We're demanding real, transformative policy change because that's what the American people need and deserve, and that they're demanding as well. House Republicans are standing on that line. I will tell the president that today. I've been saying it consistently since the moment I was handed this gavel, and that's never changed. I don't care what you call it. I'm telling you that these elements are important in order to make the change that is necessary. No one should be playing politics with this. There's too much at stake. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 49.
That's true.
Trafficking is a scourge. The
cartels are being enriched by human trafficking to the levels that not even drugs have provided for them, and Biden has done that.
The cartels on the border down there are making billions of dollars trafficking humans into the U.S.
This guy, he's stealing my talking points. That's exactly right.
60 to 70% of the people that cross at the Eagle Pass, which is the main funnel right now, are single adult males between the ages of 18 and 40.
We call them military-aged men.
They're not huddled masses of families seeking refuge and asylum. These are people who come in here probably with ill design.
Yeah, okay, so that is Mike Johnson in his own pleasant way describing that we've got people we can't even identify coming across the border, including people who have it out for us. So there's that. Now, Mike Johnson concluded the meeting today and had this to say after he stepped out of the White House.
Thank you all for being here. We had a productive meeting, I think, House and Senate leaders. The president was very forthright. I told the president what I have been saying for many months, and that is that we must have change at the border, substantive policy change. We documented 64 instances where the president took executive action or his agencies took action to create the current catastrophe that we have at the border. There's a national security.
I'll give you one. Alejandro Mayorkas announcing that being here illegally is not a basis for deportation. What do you think that does? What do you think that does? You know, if Disney announces that everyone can jump in the express line for the roller coaster and there will be no consequences, they're all going to jump in the express line. That's like, you know, to use a very simplistic example. But people will take advantage. If you announce that the cash register is open, come and get it, there will be no consequences for stealing the money, people are going to do it. And so Mayorkas announced that America's cash register is open. Come on in. Come on in. There will be no consequences. That's one of many things the Biden administration has done to enable the good fortune of foreign nationals at the deep expense of American citizens.
security and a humanitarian catastrophe. And I articulated that to the president in the meeting now. We understand that there's concern about the safety, security, sovereignty of Ukraine, but the American people have those same concerns about our own domestic sovereignty and our safety and our security. We have talked about the necessary elements to solve this problem. We passed our bill, and it has critical elements. It's a restoration of the Remain in Mexico policy. It is the end of catch and release. It is reform to the broken asylum and parole systems. We're not insistent upon a particular name of a piece of legislation, but we are insistent that the elements have to be meaningful.
The elements that he's referencing are what's in H.R. 2, that piece of legislation designed to actually secure our border. And I went and found a piece from The Hill. They're very critical of the package, the H.R. 2 package, but it's kind of interesting that some of the top lines are really straightforward and the kind of thing that you would support. It says, purges the U.S. workforce of undocumented workers. Like it's like something vile to do. What it means is it would set up nationwide E-Verify. It would require employers to cross-check their employment records against the government's database to establish whether or not there's actually a Social Security record for that employee. And if there's not, they might be illegal. And if so, this is to prevent American companies from exploiting illegal labor here in the United States and creating a magnet for that at the expense of American workers, U.S. citizens. So that would be good. E-Verify. Very simple. Democrats don't want to do it. Some Republicans don't want to do it. Certainly some donors from both parties don't want to do it because they all benefit from a corrupt system. We should do it. Slashes asylum, The Hill says. What that really means is it makes it more difficult to make a claim that you deserve asylum. And if you're going to make an asylum claim, you should make it at, you ready for it? This is very, very interesting, a port of entry, not here in the United States of America. So if your first act getting into the country is to break our laws, why should you then get the opportunity to claim, I get to stay here? Well, no, make your claim at an official port of entry. And the reality is, for so many people who come into the country from all over the planet, there are any number of safe third countries who could have taken those people along the way. They just decided that they'd rather be in America. Well, no, that's not how it works. If you need asylum, if you need safety, there's any number of countries where you could apply. And now you're applying here because you're exploiting our system. So apply at a port of entry, and then we'll litigate it. Also, it'll allow a Customs and Border Protection officer to have a higher degree of autonomy in deciding whether or not it's actually likely that that person would actually qualify for asylum. That all sounds reasonable, deeply reasonable. In fact, so common sense it should have been done years ago. They also want to make sure that the wall gets built. They want to wall off at least 900 miles of the U.S.'s roughly 2,000-mile border with Mexico. That makes sense because much of the terrain between the U.S. and Mexico is you can't actually cross it. It's too mountainous or too watery to get across. But there are areas that definitely need wall, and the Biden administration has refused to wall them off. In fact, they allowed the supplies and the contracts to run out. And they allowed the supplies to sit and rust in the desert and never get assembled, even though Donald Trump had successfully secured those. So that's real. Also, as I mentioned, it would make sure that families, if they decide to cross together, can be held together rather than separated. Now, The Hill describes it this way. What I just told you, you ready for the subject heading for that? Ends protections for migrant children. If you read the second paragraph of that section, it said, it would require DHS to reestablish family detention and once again allow families with children to be detained indefinitely. Ends protections for migrant children. It's an opposite world. So there you have it. So those are all very common sense. And Speaker Mike Johnson met with the president today and said, yeah, you've got to do these things or else no dice on your other big ambitions.
The House is ready to act, but the legislation has to solve the problem, and that's the critical point. We understand the necessity about Ukraine funding, and we want to say that the status quo is unacceptable. We need the commander-in-chief of this country, the president of the United States.
How necessary is this Ukraine funding? Please be more specific, Speaker Mike Johnson, as you say this. I realize he's using this as leverage. And if he gets us a secure border, I'd be in favor of a $10 gift card for Ukraine. That's good. We could do that. But some leverage is fine. But, be more specific. We just had a report come out of the government that billions of dollars is being lost and unaccounted for in Ukraine. We know where it went. Corruption. It's one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. So be a little bit more specific on when you say that we understand why we need to send some more money.
To show strength on the world stage and not weakness, we cannot continue with the current status quo. We understand the importance of what's been needed, but when I met with President Zelensky just last month, right before Christmas, he said that the necessary ingredient is the proper weapons systems that they need. There are certain things that are needed to ensure that they can prevail. We need the questions answered about the strategy, about the end game, and about the accountability for the precious treasure of the American people.
The theft.
We understand that all these things are important, but we must insist that the border be the top priority. I think we have some consensus around that table. Everyone understands the urgency of that. And
Don't get played. Don't get played, fellow, though. When you say you have consensus around that table, now you're making me nervous because if you start seeing Chuck Schumer not along in agreement, you may be headed in the wrong direction. Because what they want is to accelerate more illegal immigrants into this country. Biden has made that crystal clear. The whole idea is to send more money to the border to process more people in. They want to buy red carpet, not wall. I was telling you earlier, E. Jean Carroll is a columnist who is claiming that Trump defamed her by denying that he had ever raped her. So that trial is playing out today in New York. So Trump is at that trial. It's funded by a major left-wing donor. During the proceedings today, it was discovered Alina Habba, the attorney for Trump, said, hey, you claim you were defamed and you received death threats because of what Trump said. Do you have the death threats? No, I deleted them. What do you mean you deleted them? Yeah, I deleted my emails, the death threats. Well, that would be destroying evidence. You know, that's a crime, right? Objection, Your Honor, objection, the attorney yells. The judge says, oh, the jury has to ignore everything they just heard. Here's Trump stepping out of the trial today to explain.
But this is a person I have no idea, until this happened, obviously, I have no idea who she was, and nor could I care less. It's a rigged deal. It's a made-up, fabricated story. Well, they found out today that she got rid of a lot of evidence, as you probably noticed. She got rid of massive amounts of evidence. And in addition to that, she had a rifle or a gun, because she said she bought gun bullets or rifle bullets. And it was the opposite, I guess, of her gun. And was it licensed? No, it wasn't licensed. So I guess she's got a difficult problem. That's going to be her problem. But she has a gun or a rifle. She didn't really explain which.
Trump's like, it sounds like she's been committing some crimes, maybe.
Both, because she said she bought rifle bullets, so and it's totally unlicensed. So I assume that's a problem. But the judge was protecting her. He didn't want to go there. We don't want to go there. We don't want to. If that were me, it would be a different story.
Yeah, it'd be all over him. They'd be ruining his life. Real quick, one other thing on Trump. Last night, he had Vivek Ramaswamy speak at his rally in New Hampshire. Vivek did a great job. But interestingly, Vivek went after Nikki Haley in a pretty aggressive way on a Trump campaign stage.
But we have challenges to address in our own party right here at home. So you know what? If you want somebody who's going to foist onto you to use your social media account, you want to use a driver's license to do it, to have the right to use the internet, this man's not your man. There's another candidate in this race who'll do that for you. It's Nikki Haley. You want to cut Social Security, you want to cut Medicare, you want to cut veterans benefits so we can fork over more money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house? Vote for Nikki Haley, not this man right here.
I think this is a clever move on Vivek's part. There's been some chatter that Trump might be considering Nikki Haley for VP. Vivek steps up on stage and goes, you know who's the worst? Nikki Haley. And the crowd goes wild. Trump standing there listening. Perhaps he picked up a lesson or two. Very interesting. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.